negotiations, it was the government policy. Next one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, just show this previous one again. Interestingly enough, today there are again Jews in Germany. They're not German Jews, they're Russian Jews. The present German government, the post-war government, opened up Germany to immigrants from Russia after the fall of communism. And Bamberg also got its share of about 1,000 Russian Jews, who again built a small synagogue, which you can see here. This was the inauguration 5 years ago, just to show the historic development. You may even recognize the Bishop of Bamberg, who is the first one there on the right, no, a bit more to the right. Go down to where the...
Here.
No, down.
With a red cap.
Yeah, right, with a red cap.
Got it.
That's it, yeah. Which is unusual because while Bamberg had an archbishop and a big cathedral and so on, the bishops did not resist the Nazis. They were reluctant to follow or to join. And in the first few years they preached against the Nazi doctrine, but when it became serious they became silent, including in Bamberg.
Can I interject one?
Yeah.
Just want to add, this picture reminds me that I think unlike many Holocaust survivors, Werner has gone back to Bamberg repeatedly over the years because of his love for his native city. And he has 12 grandchildren, and anytime any of the grandchildren have a bar or bat mitzvah, he brings them back to Bamberg to show them their roots and where they're from. And this picture, I imagine, was taken during one of those trips. Yeah.
Yes, we do that because our children growing up in Israel know very little and can imagine very little about the history of the family or the history of Jews in general in Europe, because Israel is far from Europe in that sense. And going back and seeing the houses and seeing the cities and seeing the synagogues gives them some idea of the history of the Jews in Germany, including our family. We'll go on to the next one.
Yeah.
Now this is a very interesting document. It's the diary of my sister Erika, Barbara's mother, which she started as a girl of 10 in Bamberg. It's written in German script. I don't know how many of you can read the German script. Later on she changes to the Latin script. And she...
If anyone can see, there's an English phrase here, shut up, please, William.
Right. Right. And she recorded everything that happened to her as a teenager would. A beautiful description. And it is so interesting that the school that she went to in Hamburg decided to publish it and teach it as part of the history courses every year to the graduating class. It starts out in German, later on she switches partly to English and partly in German. And she has a lot of illustrations and things in it. And in writing my book, it was a great help because I couldn't remember all the things that she writes about, including my own bar mitzvah. She describes the ceremony in the synagogue in great detail, what the rabbi said, what presents I got and all that, which today I couldn't remember without her. This is, for example, New Year's Eve 1940, how she marked that in her diary. We found these diaries, but Barbara, you tell the story how we found the diaries.
Well, it's actually an amazing coincidence. My brother and I were cleaning out my parents' house in New York. My parents had both passed away. And a month or two before we were getting ready to sell the house, Werner and Pamela were in New York. And Werner asked if he could come by and look through some old photo albums and see if he could find anything that was of sentimental value to him. We went in my parents' basement through the drawers where the photo albums were, and I found this, you know, what looked like a journal, and it was all in German. I had never seen it before. I don't speak German. I don't read German. I had no idea what it was. And it was just really through a twist of fate that Werner happened to be there with me that day of all days. And he looked at it and he recognized immediately what it was and recognized the significance of it.
May I interrupt for a minute? I was never allowed to look at it. It had a lock on it. My sister locked it.
But Werner remembered that his sister, my mother, had kept a diary and had kept her little brother from looking at it. And he recognized right away the significance of it. I always say that if Werner hadn't been there at the time when I found this in my parents' basement, it would just be sitting in a box somewhere. My mother, I think, forgot about it over the years. She never mentioned it, and all these years it's been sitting there. And now in Bamberg, thanks to Werner's efforts, my mother has become sort of a celebrity. You know, as Werner said, this diary is taught in school, and they've had exhibitions and public readings, and you know, all because of Werner's efforts. So.
Well, basically because of your mother's writings.
Yeah.
Excuse me, could you tell us when your mother was born?
She was born in 1921.
21.
Yeah.
Okay.
24, I'm sorry, that was my father. Okay, I'm sorry, 24.
She was 124, I was 126, we were a year and a half apart.
Actually, and this is, I think...
This is from the diary, pages from the diary. My sister and I left Germany for England in 1939. I'll just briefly give the background of the development. As soon as my father was released from the concentration camp, they told him, as they released the Jews, you better get out of Germany, because if you come to Dachau or any concentration camp again, you won't get out alive. Easier said than done, because where would you go? The first thing my parents tried was the consulate of the United States in Stuttgart in Germany to apply for a visa for America. We had relatives here, including brothers of my mother, and there was no problem about economic support and so on. But the American government had a quota, immigration quota, and it was a very small quota, I think 30,000 a year from all over the world. And our number on the waiting list at the consulate in Stuttgart was 22,000 something. So if we had waited for that, we'd all be dead. So the question was where to go until your term comes up, until we can go to the United States. And again, the world was closed. President Roosevelt, those of you who remember the history of World War II, called a conference in Evian in France in 1938 to ask the nations of the world to accept Jewish refugees from Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia. And although he put a lot of pressure and emphasis, nobody responded. And the United States also didn't increase its quota. So the message was, and Hitler got this message, the world doesn't want the Jews. You can do what you like. There is a chapter in the book which I call the Dominican Interlude, where I tell the story of the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic at that time, 1938, was governed by a very cruel dictator, Trujillo. I don't know how many of you know the name, but he was a terrible man, shot his own people and ruled by terror. But at the conference in Evian, this particular conference to solve the refugee problem, his representative got up and said, the Dominican Republic is prepared to take 100,000 refugees. As it turned out, this was long before Auschwitz, and the Jews of Germany or Czechoslovakia and Austria thought the Dominican Republic is a tropical hell and tried not to go there. A few did go, and a few took the visa in order to get out and go somewhere else. A small Jewish colony was established there with dairy farms and agriculture and so on. But the interesting thing is the reason. Somebody a few years later asked this General Trujillo, how come the whole world refused to take Jews, nobody wanted them, and you opened up your country and said 100,000. So Trujillo said, because I know my history. In 1492, when the Spaniards expelled the Jews from Spain, Spain went down. It was the beginning of the downfall of the Spanish Empire. And the countries that accepted the Jews, mainly Holland and England started to prosper and become big commercial powers. So I'll be glad if they can 1,000 Jews.